Clive, if we were to get a business card from you, besides the obvious name of Clive Barker, what do you think it would say for occupation?
Imaginer. Professional imaginer, I think, is what I would like if I had to have a business card. I've done so many different kinds of things, but the common thread has always been the imagination. So whether it's been working in theater or painting, film, obviously, novels, poetry even, it's the imaginative element which I hope distinguishes the Clive Barker work.
Alright, so to get the list started, we're going to start with the prolific director, James Whale, who was pretty prominent in the 30s and the 40s, right?
Classic Universal horror. He did Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, The Invisible Man, and The Old Dark House. These are the movies that he's most known for, although he did do a lot of stuff. He gets some gay cred. He did the definitive version of the musical Showboat.
Okay.
And many other films. Unfortunately, most of them are forgotten, but he's so revered, and rightly so, for creating these amazing, just iconic horror films. He has a really interesting life, too. I actually read a biography of him. He's an English director. He was interned in a POW camp in World War II, a German camp, and that's how he got involved with doing like their theater productions and whatnot. So once he was released, he wanted to continue to pursue that, and he actually did a really acclaimed play that starred Colin Clive, who he would end up casting as Henry Frankenstein in the two Frankenstein movies.
So it's all interconnected. So now, do you think that, I think you mentioned that he was one of the few openly gay people at the time as well.
Yeah, the fact that he was openly lived with his longtime partner, that was like not very common at all in Hollywood, so it was a pretty big deal.
Oh, the shocker, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I did want to ask you, first, have you seen a lot of his movies, and do you think that his sexuality was sort of like a direct influence on a lot of his work?
Well, I kind of tend to think that it was. The main ones that I've seen are the Frankenstein films, which are fantastic. Bride of Frankenstein in particular, I had a queer identity professor who talked a lot about how you could kind of analyze the movie from a queer lens. We talked particularly about the interlude where Frankenstein befriends the blind hermit, and there's like wedding bells at the end of the scene where they're like sort of becoming connected. There's also kind of an interesting factor that Dr. Pretorius in Bride of Frankenstein is a very flamboyant character. He was played by an openly gay actor, Ernest Thesiger, and it was also heavily rumored that Colin Clive may have been gay or bisexual. I was watching before he came over a special about Frankenstein, and I kind of get that vibe from him a little bit from his acting. So, I think possibly it's there. I feel like if nothing else on a subconscious level, it probably informed his work the way that anybody's lived experience informs their work. I guess I would be remiss without saying that, there's also been a lot of dismissal of this. His longtime companion, who was actually the one who found his body, committed suicide. Unfortunately, he was found floating in his swimming pool. And his suicide note wasn't revealed until his partner passed away, so for a long time it was kind of like a mysterious death. But he said that all of that was nonsense. He said that he was just an artist, not a gay artist, and that he didn't intend for any of these meanings to be read into the movie that, critics have subsequently posed. So I guess the only one who really knows is James, but in any case, he made some just absolutely amazing films.
Yeah. Now, he actually was the subject of a film that came out it's been a little while, but it was actually Gods and Monsters was kind of like a biopic.
Right? Won an Oscar for the screenplay. Has an amazing performance by another openly gay actor, Ian McKellen. Yeah. And it was actually produced by Clive Barker. And the first time that I realized that Clive Barker was gay, I was watching an interview where he said, Wales was gay, I'm gay. So that's kind of how I found out that he also was a gay.
Good way to keep his memory alive. So it was a pretty good movie, too.
It's a great movie.
Our guest tonight has taken horror a step beyond the Frankenstein monster and the psycho killer to produce storylines that some say can only be the result of a diseased mind. The man who's made millions terrifying people with visions from beyond the grave, Clive Barker, is open to question.
So speaking of Clive Barker...
Yes. the Mac Daddy of them all. I have to say, Clive Barker holds a very special place in my heart, actually, because he was one of the first authors that I discovered was actually gay growing up. But for him to be concentrated in such a niche genre and to make such such a wild contribution to it, I actually kind of feel like puts him on a special place in this list. You know, and especially like looking at his life and seeing how he kind of, started also a lot like James Whale from humble beginnings, like doing his own theater productions. Right. And he was very much like the arts man. Like he was very like articulate and he was very poetic. And even though he was very dark, like he had this like very eloquent style to him when you see him in his younger days, and then somehow he turned into like this leather daddy, like he's
a little bit scary.
He's
like
a little
intimidated if I knew him in real life.
I mean, he's very gruff, and he looks like he put on some muscle. And I have to tell you, his career has just spanned everything from video games and movies and comics, and even I have to say, even some underground stuff. When the Oscar Wilde bookstore was still open in Manhattan, he was married to a photographer, I think, named David Armstrong. They were married for a while and they actually had a daughter together. But I remember the name of the publication was like, it was pretty not suitable for work, but it was it dealt a lot with erotic themes and kind of like monsters.
He has a Tumblr now that has a lot of erotic photography, and there's like still kind of a horror element to it, but I've seen a lot of it online. It's pretty fascinating.
It's interesting because I remember opening the first page of that magazine, and he did like a little forward, but it was a picture of him pretty much naked in front of a big ball of fire that was covering most of the naughty bits, and I was just, and I had to look at it.
I've seen that.
I looked at it closer, and I was like, yeah, that's Clive Barker. I can't, So, so I say adding, a nice body on top of that is always, is always a good selling point. I mean, his work is so prolific. I would think it'd be hard to follow everything, but I definitely know like some of the highlights for me. I first got involved with him when I read the Books of Blood, and it was his short story collections. And I know I definitely remember, aside from dealing with really fun horror themes, he did incorporate. Game. I think the short story that sticks out to me the most is, I can't remember the title, but it was really interesting. It was two gay men that are driving through kind of like a vacation area, and there's two warring towns, and all of the people from each town kind of come together, and they form these giant like creatures that are able to move, but it's all made out of the interwoven bodies of the townspeople. And it's about these two gay guys that get caught in between them when they like these two rivaling villages that are about to clash and have like a big kaiju fight almost.
Wow.
The box. You opened it. We came.
It's just a puzzle box!
Oh no. It is a means to summon us.
Who are you?
Explorers in the further regions of experience. Demons to some. Angels to others.
I mean, personally speaking, I think everybody knows him for the Hellraiser movies. I'm actually really looking forward to reading the Scarlet Gospels, which totally, I think, cements Pinhead's origin stories.
Mr. Hood's holiday house is a place where the days are always warm and sunny.
Harvey Swick. As I live and breathe, I'm Mrs. Griffin.
And the nights are full of wonders.
He seems to play a lot on this idea of like childhood adventures, and I know one of your favorite books is
I was going to say, I've
theme.
read multiple times his book, The Thief of Always, which is for younger readers. It's got really cool illustrations by him. It's about a little boy who's whisked away to this, seeming fantasy land, this holiday house where you experience all the best parts of the year within a day. The summer and Halloween and Christmas, which of course appealed to me. But the sort of dark secret is that while it seems like only a day for you, in real life, years and years are going by, and this house is kind of like feeding on their souls, and they have to try to like defeat it and escape it. It was outstanding. Another Clive Barker thing that I really love is Nightbreed. Which is a really great, I feel like, underrated, fantasy horror film from the 1980s. Totally bombed upon release, but found a cult following like so many other things.
Which is a shame, because I think at one time he described it as wanting it to almost be like the Star Wars
for monsters,
monsters.
Star Wars and monster movies. And that one I feel like is pretty allegorical for queer audiences. I mean, there's sort of this, persecuted underground of creatures living, you know, I think it really reflected a lot of what people were feeling, what with, you know, AIDS and just, you know, struggling for liberation, struggling to be recognized. So he's done a lot of stuff over the years that I very much appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I like about it too is just it really shows you the kind of level of imagination that can really go into horror, and I think like how the horror genre is, you know, just a fascinating place to cultivate imagination. So he does a great job at that. So Clive Barker is definitely somebody who is a major queer for fear.